Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first cabinet of the autumn year, and let's hope we have a better time in the forthcoming months than we've had during the summer. Don't think we have any apologies from cabinet members, but Marty and Andrew are both on holiday, so we record their apologies. Can we approve the minutes of the meeting on the 14th of July?
Approve them, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you for that. I haven't really got any announcements to make, except I'm hoping that everything goes smoothly with IT this afternoon. We've got some very important items on the agenda and we need to get through them. So I'm sure everything's in order and we'll move that forward. No urgent items to add. Can I bring members' attention to a declaration of interest, if anybody's got any interest there? And then the main item on the agenda is the key report, the consultation of the governance review and the mayoral scheme for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The report brings the outcomes of the recent consultation on devolution, and it is asked to submit the scheme and responses to the Secretary of State. As a reminder, devolution would bring an historic transit of powers to the investment from Whitehall to our region. It will give local control for at least £8 billion of funding to be spent on the things that matter to the people of West Yorkshire. The deal means decisions across key areas such as better transport, skills, the economy, housing and regeneration will all be taken in West Yorkshire. If the Secretary of State agrees that creating a mayoral combined authority will improve things in West Yorkshire, we will work with the government and bring back the final outcome to reach council for approval in November. This will pave the way for a mayoral election in 2021. All five West Yorkshire authorities are taking the same report in the next few days. In fact, Leeds took their decision yesterday and that went through. If we can get the scheme submitted and an order in place, we would get the first tranche of the gain share funding this financial year, which would be worth 23 million. Overall, the consultation received 4,000 responses. Now, we might think that this isn't a lot, but actually it's received more than any other combined authority scheme. In Wakefield, we got 400 responses. Now that is not brilliant, but it doesn't surprise me. We campaigned, and I personally led the campaign a few years ago, not to have a mayor. But quite frankly, it's the only game in town now if we're to have the funding that we desperately need and require. So there were more positive responses over than negative. There were more responses that were strongly opposed than strongly in favour. But when you add in the oppose or in favour, the numbers in agreement are higher in Wakefield than those that oppose. Colleagues will be aware that Wakefield voted not to have an elected mayor, and as I say, that's what we campaigned on. I'm not surprised that the figures are low, but government has been clear. We can't have this deal without one. The deal and the scheme with the built-in controls represent the best opportunity to get more control over finance, things that matter to us. I will continue to champion the views of Wakefield residents, and I know all of you will, and make sure we get a fair share of the funding to improve the lives of local residents. This control means that the new mayor cannot impose things without our agreement. We have to submit the scheme by the 11th of September to meet the timetable. So this report is exempt from calling, will be debated at council this afternoon, so all councillors were able to give their views. There is a request for a delegation to the Combined Authority Chief Execs in consultation with the leaders if there are any minor changes to the submission in the light of anything coming out of the various meetings. I'll leave it at that and I'll take any comments or questions. Margaret.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm going to support this. This, as you say, a few years ago, we did vote not to have the mayor, but as you say, if we want to move forward in the future, that we need to be moving along these lines, and if that's what we have to do, we have to do. I would just like to say that my feeling is that 2.51 on agenda point 6, on agenda page 6, and 2.52, I think it is important for scrutiny that we really try to push for these particular points for the mayor to come to council and for us to be able to ask and see that he's acting in the best, he or she is acting in the best interests of our residents.
Yes, I think we must push for that, Margaret. I think it's very important that whoever is elected as mayor is accountable to all of the 5 West Yorkshire authorities. Maureen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Margaret. We did go out a number of years ago and decided that we didn't want to mayor for Wakefield, but times change, and I think we have to change with those times. I think it is about securing as much as we can for Wakefield and ensuring actually that we sat at the top table to help make those decisions. I just have a couple of questions, if I may, and this may be to Gillian. Within the report it says that there will be no calling due to time constraints. Let's say, for instance, if it was that a decision was taken to call in, what would that do to the timeline? And secondly, and I have mentioned this, I did send an email about this. I think it's agenda page 10, 4.13 refers to 2.9 and 2.9.
I'm sorry, Maureen, you're breaking up. You're broken up there.
Sorry, I don't know if you got as far as the call-in, but
I got the call-in bit, but not the second.
The second bit is agenda page 10, 4.13 refers to 2.9.
I'm sorry, Maureen, you went off again. We've got to page 10.
I'll put it in the comments, Denise.
Okay, fine, thank you. Gillian, can you answer Maureen on the call-in?
Yes, Leader, I can answer both points because Councillor Cummins has emailed me about the second one that she was struggling just to get said there. So in relation to the call-in, as you will know, if an item is eligible for call-in, there is that period of 5 days, 5 clear days between the decision and the implementation. Obviously, that wouldn't be an issue with regard to the timetable and needing to submit it by the 11th of September. But if it were to be called in, the period of time then to have a meeting and to make a decision about whether to release it or refer it back would put us past the 11th of September. The impact of that is that the Secretary of State wouldn't be able to start the parliamentary process in time, and that would mean that the order wouldn't be made and we couldn't make the preparations for a mayoral election. Now, as you've said, Leader, if we can get the legislation through, there's been a commitment from government that we would get a tranche of gain share funding in this financial year, but that is subject to getting the legislation through and making the preparations for an election. So if we miss that, that will cost us, as you've said, £23 million in this financial year, certainly. The second point that Councillor Cummins, before I go on to the second point, also just to say that at your request, we have set this up for a debate at full council this afternoon, at which all councillors have the opportunity to have a say and have their views heard, which is more extensive than the possibility of a call-in through the scrutiny process. In relation to the second point, Councillor Cummins is referring to paragraph 413 of the report on agenda page 10, and that is referring to the consultation detailed above at 2.9, and as Councillor Cummins is saying, that should read 4.9 above, and it's entirely my error, for which I apologise.
Okay, thank you for that. Jack, you have a comment.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I mean, I'm fully in support of the recommendations. I think after years of austerity, we desperately need this funding, and it is a historic opportunity that we must seize while it's presented to us. For too long, we've had powers and funding concentrated in Westminster and Whitehall, and this is at least a step in the right direction. And I think also over the last few months, we've seen the way in which the Mayor of Greater Manchester stood up for the North West with a single clear voice. And I really think West Yorkshire needs similar representation so that we're represented at national level and can fight for greater funding. So fully support the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Jack. Matthew, you have a comment.
Yes, thank you, Denise. Just to say, Denise, I think the referendum that we held in Wakefield in 2012 for the mayor was completely different to what we're talking about today. That came with no funding whatsoever. This is absolutely a fantastic opportunity to get a lot of funding back into the West Yorkshire area, and especially Wakefield. We've gone on for far too long now about how we've been starved of funding over the last 10 years, and this is really going to help us get some of our key projects back online and get so much needed funding into Wakefield and West Yorkshire. Hopefully as well, I think the mayor, by being a mayor for West Yorkshire, can really get hold of the public transport debate, get public transport a lot more joined up and working better, as something we desperately need, especially in Wakefield and West Yorkshire. So I really do support the content of a mayor, and I think it's a step in the right direction for Wakefield.
Thank you, Matthew. Faith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to echo what colleagues have already said. I mean, I acknowledge the full report on contents and the benefits of devolution to the district for Wakefield residents. I mean, specifically in respect of agenda page 19, 9.5.1 and 9.5.2, has already been alluded to. I'd also be in full support of the combined authority and mayor bringing an annual report to council and attendance at council to answer any questions proposed by members and on behalf of residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Jackie.
Sorry, thank you, Leader. I just want to add my support of colleagues to the proposal. I do think the response rate to the consultation has been disappointing. However, I think had there been any really strong opposition, that I'm sure that would have come through. So I think sort of the low level means that there is an acceptance that this is the only way forward. And I think that, you know, if we want the district to prosper and grow, then we need the funding that comes with that. And hopefully this is going to provide it. So I support the report.
Thank you, Jackie. I would say that on the consultation, I think at a time like this, when people are worried about COVID and all the things that are happening in their lives, I don't think the election of a mayor for the combined authority is top of their agenda. It's only people like us who are hooked on this sort of thing. So I don't think it was too bad. And again, I say that people have had enough on their minds without this, and I know it's disappointing and only 400, and I think that will be raised by our opposition this afternoon, but it's what it is. And in other areas they haven't had a lot more when another combined authorities were formed. So I think because of the situation we've not done too badly in this consultation.
Okay.
Michael.
Thanks, Denise. My point was the one that Jackie made. It was the comment on how many people have responded, and I know you've just touched on it there. I do think 4,000 out of, I think, 2.3 million in Yorkshire, it is an extremely small amount of people that have responded. It's definitely less than 1%, which I do find really disappointing. I think here in Wakefield, we really appreciate what residents have to say, and we always listen to them and take on their views when making decisions. So I would have liked to have seen more respondents in Wakefield give us their opinion on it. But I think Jackie's made a really good point that if there was a huge opposition to having an elected mayor, then that would have come through in the responses. And from what I can see, I think the majority are supportive of what we've got here. And just to echo what Jack and Matthew have both said about the deal in general, I think we really don't have any sort of other option. If we want to see investment, we want to see money come to Wakefield and improving people's lives, especially after the terrible year that West Yorkshire's had with the pandemic and the rest of the country, then we really need this money and we really need this deal to come through. So I'm fully in support of it.
Thanks, Michael. Darren.
Thank you, Leader. I think the investment, the opportunity and the direction that this will give Wakefield within the wider West Yorkshire is an amazing game changer. And the simple question I ask myself is why wouldn't we support this? But I do think that there are two things that have already been raised, that 9.51 and 9.52 is a must, and we must really argue strongly for that. But the other thing that comes out of the report is 8.5, which is the climate change implications. And you know, the important work that the deputy leader's doing on this will be strengthened, and it will give us a much more significant impact as we try and battle this in the years to come. So I fully support this.
I think, and we've seen Merrin's comments here, we must make sure that local democracy is upheld and people are more engaged. This wasn't the year for any consultation really, but the timescales were just that we had to go with it. We couldn't delay. Gillian, I think Michael has a question for you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Councillor Graham is asking about the comparison with other combined authority consultations. And the next nearest consultation, which was the Sheffield one, in which residents were quite engaged because it was quite controversial, if you remember. I think they only got 1,000 responses and we got 4,000, which, given that this was happening during COVID and happening largely online, does show that the efforts we made to reach people did work. I agree it's not a great response, but it's certainly better than other combined authorities have managed to achieve.
Yeah, no, it's as I say, it is what it is, and really, in such terrible times, to undertake any consultation would have been a bad idea. And if we'd have had the opportunity not to do this, we would have waited, but we didn't, and we delay it for another year. And I think we should make that point at council, that despite everything, we've had the best response that we could have expected. Anybody else want to comment before we move to the recommendation? No, okay. Well, the recommendation is set out at 9.1. Can we all support the recommendation?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks very much. Can Cabinet members just stay online? Thanks, everybody.